Discover the incredible moment a little girl and her dog transformed one cop's life in the forest. Officer Jake Thompson trudged the outskirts of Pinewood, where the crisp air danced with the aroma of fallen leaves. At 36, he should have felt alive in this charming Midwest town, yet a pervasive gray cloaked him. Rising crime rates gnawed at his conscience, each statistic a bitter reminder of his perceived failures. His role as a protector had transformed into a burden, a relentless darkness whispering doubts and regrets. The golden-hued sunlight filtered weakly through the trees, yet all Jake could see were the shadows of his past, lurking and taunting him. As he walked the familiar forest paths, a sudden burst of laughter shattered the weight of his thoughts. It was Lily, an 8-year-old girl with bright pigtails, dancing around with her bouncing golden retriever, Max. They were a whirlwind of joy, searching for her lost kitten, and for a moment, Jake found solace in the simplicity of their quest. He laughed, sharing stories of his own childhood pets, his heart momentarily lifting from the heavy cocoon it had formed. Here, in this little girl's presence, he felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in too long, a fleeting glimpse of hope. But with every minute that passed, Jake's burdens crept back in. Was he still capable of protecting those who depended on him? The pressures of his job echoed through his mind, each siren blaring like a reminder of how far he felt from the man he used to be. Yet, as he played detective with Lily, piecing together clues amidst the sprawling woods, he peeled back layers of his own guarded heart, growing closer to this fearless girl. She was a bright spark in his stale life, but could he carry the weight of responsibility if something went wrong? Then, all at once, the atmosphere shifted. Lily's laughter disappeared. Panic gripped his chest as he realized she had gone quiet, vanished into the maze of trees. Jake's heart raced, muscles tensing not just from the chase but from a deeper fear. How could he protect her? Was he truly worthy of being a cop? Those shadows now screamed louder than ever, reminding him of past failures, of moments where his decisions had led to heart-wrenching consequences. The sun dipped behind the horizon, extinguishing the warmth and replacing it with an ominous chill. The woods, once a sanctuary, became suffocating, a labyrinth of uncertainties and regrets. He called for her, but only the eerie silence answered. Desperation clawed at him. Was this payback for his doubts? Each moment spent searching ignited a fire within him, pushing him to reclaim his sense of duty amidst the chaos. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the depths of the forest, memories flooded back, tangled reminders of choices made and their consequences. Should he press forward, risking another failure? The ghosts of self-doubt wrapped themselves around him tighter as shadows stretched and twisted. Suddenly, a faint, frightened cry pierced through the air. Was it really her? Hope struggled against despair, leaving Jake teetering on the edge of a profound realization. If he didn't find her soon, he might lose not just Lily, but the last vestiges of the man he once was. He bolted deeper into the woods, every heartbeat echoing with urgent questions about his worth. As Jake raced through the darkness, the oppressive weight of the night loomed over him. His mind flickered back to the laughter of a little girl whose spirit had, for a fleeting moment, breathed light into his heavy heart. Could he overcome the peril of the woods, but more so, rise above the demons within? The shadows of the forest wrapped around Jake like a thick fog, blurring his vision and weighing down his resolve. Each step seemed to echo the doubts that plagued him. With every snapped twig beneath his feet, he felt the pressure of his past failures surge anew. He concentrated on the sound that had jolted him out of his reverie, the faint cry echoing through the trees. Panic threatened to swallow him whole, yet something deeper stirred in his chest, a flicker of determination ignited by a need to protect Lily. he shouted, his voice breaking the suffocating silence. Each call felt desperate, wrapped up in the urgency of the moment. He pushed forward, adrenaline racing through his veins, driven by the intrinsic need to find her not just as a cop, but as a human. Hadn't he sworn an oath? Hadn't he promised to protect those who couldn't protect themselves? Following the sounds of rustling leaves, Jake felt his instincts sharpen. This was a different pursuit, adorned with familiar sentiments of bravery, duty, and vulnerability. It mirrored the days when he first joined the force, filled with idealism and belief that he could change lives. As he moved, memories of Lily's laughter, her imaginative spirit and the innocence of her quest unfolded like a film reel. She had awakened something in him, a longing to recapture his purpose. Suddenly, the echoes of despair shifted. In the distance, he caught sight of a glimmer of gold fur against the darkened backdrop. Instinctively, he knelt, hoping it was an approach to an answer. Max, Lily's dog, bounded toward him, barking fervently, his eyes wide with concern. "Where's Lily, boy?" Jake's voice was soft now, strained with emotion. The dog stopped at his feet, paw raised, as if urging him to follow. Without thinking, Jake rose again, letting Max lead the way. The deeper they went, the more the darkness pressed in on him, not just from the forest but from within. Doubts bubbled up, reminding him of moments when he had failed others, victims left unprotected. Reflecting on his journey, he recognized that his current sense of purpose was at stake, and here was the young girl who had ignited that spark within him. An unexpected revelation struck him. Being a cop was not just about maintaining law and order. It was about fostering safety, reassurance, and hope. That was what he must cling to, what he must fight for, through every doubt and shadow. "Lily!" He called again, stronger this time, pushing against the walls of uncertainty that had long confined him. Then, another whimper pierced the air, clear and unmistakable, the sound of a child lost. In that moment, Jake felt the walls of doubt begin to crumble. This wasn't merely a search for a little girl, it was a quest to reclaim his identity. As he hurtled inward, a sudden rush of adrenaline fueled his resolve. He had to overcome the very thoughts that had immobilized him for too long. Jake forged ahead, steeling his mind against the inner whispers that sought to drag him back to fear and failure. He didn't just want to save Lily, he needed to prove to himself that he was worthy of the badge he wore. The path before him grew more tangled and dim, but he pressed on. A sense of clarity emerged amidst the chaos as he began to feel the essence of who he was trained to be. And then he heard it, laughter, tinged with fear, but laughter nonetheless. It floated through the air, mixed with the rustle of leaves, and filled him with fresh urgency. The moment had arrived, Jake felt it deep in his bones. But what awaited him on the other side would soon challenge everything he thought he knew about himself. He dashed toward the sound, determined to confront both the darkness in the forest and the shadows in his heart. The time had come to face not just the imminent danger, but the man he desperately yearned to rediscover. The laughter rang out again, broken and wavering but unmistakably alive. It struck Jake's heart like a bolt of electricity, jolting him forward into the shadows. The urgency of the moment fueled him with purpose. The fear that had gripped him moments earlier transformed into pure, focused determination. As he rushed deeper into the thicket, he felt the weight of the badge on his chest pushing him onward, as if it were reminding him of the duty he had almost forgotten. "Stay close, Max," Jake commanded, his voice steady now. The dog bounded ahead, weaving through the underbrush, and Jake instinctively followed, the air thick with tension and an unshakable sense of responsibility. This was not just a case, it was a turning point. Each brush of leaves against him ignited a thought: what if he did lose her? The thought sent a chill through his core, but it also stoked a fire of resolve. He couldn't let fear paralyze him anymore, he had to confront whatever was lurking in the dark, both in the forest and within his mind. The underbrush grew denser as Jake pushed onward. Each step required effort, but he was in an altered state now, focused and almost transcendent. In his mind, he replayed his path as a police officer, the glittering hope he had when he first donned the uniform. But the years had molded him with cynicism and doubt. Now, in this moment within the shadows of the forest, the primordial call to protect had become a clarion call to rediscover himself. Suddenly, the laughter faded, replaced by a soft muffled sob, echoing through the trees. It was the sound of distress, the sound that gripped Jake's heart with renewed urgency. With every breath, he wrestled against the doubt that threatened to engulf him. Straining his ears for any sound, he took a deep breath and called out again, "Lily. I'm here." What if he couldn't find her? A seed of panic clawed at him, but he shoved it down. This was about more than just Lily's safety, it was about finding the courage that had eluded him for far too long. He realized how crucial this was for him, to reclaim what it meant to truly protect and serve. He forced his mind to zoom in on the present. What could he do differently now? His thoughts began to crystallize. Perhaps this was his chance to demonstrate the lessons he had neglected, the lessons he learned every day from his colleagues, the ones he thought he had lost forever. One step at a time, he told himself. One thought and action. As Jake maneuvered through the thicket, he felt a surge of latent ability, a mix of intuition and instinct sharpening his focus. The inability to save others had created a deep chasm within him, but he could rebuild that strength now, starting with Lily. Each step toward her was a step toward reclaiming his identity. "Stay calm, Lily. I'm coming," he shouted, his voice echoing with newfound strength. He could feel the tension in his muscles easing, a lightness emerging as the world around him shifted. The darkness of the woods felt more like an enveloping blanket of potential than an insurmountable barrier. Then, there she was. Through a thicket of branches, he saw her small silhouette, curled up against a tree trunk, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. The sight ignited a fierce yearning in his chest, a belief that washed over him like a wave. Lily's gaze met his, and in that single moment, Jake felt the full force of every doubt, every challenge he had overcome in life. It was a reminder that he had the power to protect. He was not defined by his failures but by his resolve to rise again. But before he could reach her, a low growl interrupted the air, and the shadows shifted once more. Jake froze. His instincts sharpened into crystal clarity, and the slender line between protector and prey tightened around him. What awaited him in the blackness revealed a much more profound battle, not just for the child's safety, but a confrontation that would either shatter or redefine Jake's very essence. The darkness thickened, wrapping around Jake like a shroud. The low growl echoed in his ears, deeper than the rumble of imminent danger, shaking him to the core. He fought against the different shades of fear swirling inside him, each a reminder of moments he had failed, each a shadow searching for light. Max sensed the tension in the air, his body coiled like a spring, ready for action. Jake's heart raced as he scanned the underbrush for the source of the growl. It wasn't just a threat, it was a converging moment in his life, a fork in the path filled with uncertainty and potential. In the dim light, a pair of eyes stared back at him, unforgiving and wild. "Stay back, Max," he commanded, suppressing the tremor in his voice. He tightened his grip on the flashlight, its beam cutting a narrow path through the dark. The dog's growl deepened, instinctively protective, yet Jake felt the surge of power in that fraught moment. He had often made decisions based on instinct versus intellect. In the past, his desire to act without fully confirming was a mixture of reckless bravery and desperation. But now, something shifted. It was not merely the child's safety on the line, it was a pivotal moment for Jake to rediscover his purpose and position himself between courage and cowardice. The growl intensified, reverberating with primal energy, heightening the tension in the space around them. Jake inhaled sharply, allowing himself a moment of vulnerability. What was he really afraid of? The creature before him, or failing yet again to protect those who depended on him? The thought settled like lead in his stomach, forcing clarity he desperately needed. "Look, I can help you," Jake said, lifting his flashlight high, attempting to illuminate not just the creature, but the situation that sought to suffocate him. "You don't have to do this." For the first time, his voice was both calm and authoritative, reflecting a man no longer driven solely by self-doubt. In that moment of confrontation, he began to understand the stakes weren't merely external. The creature, whatever it was a mirror reflecting the fears that had resurrected within him, the fear of inadequacy, the fear of losing control. He was not just facing a threat, he was standing up to everything that had diminished him. Then, inspiration hit. With one simple thought, he realized he could use his surroundings to his advantage. Jake stepped slowly toward the creature, steadying his breath, speaking in a low timbre. "I'm not your enemy." He crouched slightly, making himself appear smaller, less threatening. Max positioned himself, circling wide, eyeing the beast with an intensity that Jake mirrored. It became a silent dance, each movement deliberate, the two acting as one entity driven by the intertwined motivations of protection and perseverance. As Jake gauged the creature slowly edging into the beam of his flashlight, he felt an unexpected connection. Fear transformed into understanding, the pulse of conflict now feeding his resolve to move forward, to step into the heart of the confrontation instead of away from it. The growl ceased, and in its place came a whimper. Something within the creature's eyes shifted from hostility to hesitation. That moment of acknowledgement spoke louder than the growls or the shadows stretching all around them. It was not just about Lily's safety, it was about Jake confronting his own demons, his doubts, his failures, the very essence of what it meant to be a protector. "I can help you," he whispered, the words laced with a newfound strength. Then, from behind him, a soft whimper caught his attention. Jake turned swiftly, recognizing that the shadows hadn't just been an obstacle but a transformative barrier revealing every layer of him that had been stifled. His heart pounded not just with fear but with the pulse of hope, a hope that he could finally reclaim his purpose. But just as the tension seemed to shift in his favor, a snap echoed in the thicket behind him, drawing attention away from the confrontation. Jake's instincts flared, realizing the threat was multiplying, not diminishing. "Lily!" he shouted, the urgency returning. Would it ever end? The question hung in the air, dark and heavy. But in this moment, he steeled himself to face whatever emerged from the darkness next. This was more than a chase, it was the final test of his resolve. What would he discover about himself when the final shadow revealed its truth? Jake turned, the weight of the growl shaking off his focus for a moment. The snap of branches had shifted his reality, and the palpable tension filled the air like static before a storm. He had been on the cusp of unlocking something significant within himself, yet the emerging threat felt like a riptide trying to pull him back into his old fears. "Lily!" he called again, his heart hammering against his ribcage. The urgency pushed him, a need to find her and ensure her safety, but the impending danger could not be ignored. Internal chaos ground against his instinct for self-preservation. Jake would dive into bravery, but only if it meant reinforcing his commitment to protect those who were vulnerable. As he shifted his stance, directing his flashlight's beam toward the origin of the snap, Jake's mind raced with the echoes of his training as a police officer. He remembered the countless hours spent in mock scenarios, processing threats, evaluating responses. But this was different, it was no longer academic. It was about real stakes, tangible uncertainty, and the lives involved were not merely cases on a report. His chest tightened, he had everything riding on this moment. "Max, stay alert," he whispered, feeling the adrenaline sharpen his senses. Each muscle was awake, alive, and he was beginning to realize he could harness this raw energy. Was it fear that motivated him, or was it the will to reclaim the ideals he once held close? The growl morphed into another whimper, and Jake's heartbeat synchronized with the animal's transition. Layer by layer, the fears once bound by threads of doubt were slowly unraveling. He forced his attention back to the creature while the sound of Lily's soft whimpers reached him like a haunting reminder of his own shortcomings. Drawing in a steadying breath, he focused on what he could control. The traits instilled in him through years on the force, dedication, empathy, decisiveness rose to the surface, recalling moments where he stood firm even when he felt shattered. He was compelled to confront, rather than retreat. A decision had coalesced. This wasn't just about rescuing a girl, this was about embracing his role, shedding the layers of self-doubt that had dimmed his spirit. Leaving the threshold of courage, Jake took a step forward, his feet moving through the thick underbrush as if it were water. "Lily! I'm coming!" The bark of his command echoed through the forest, fortified by clarity. Then suddenly, the dense darkness faltered, revealing a figure small and trembling, with wide eyes searching for answers. Lily stood there, clutching Max's collar, her expression a mix of fear and hope. Jake rushed to her, grounding himself in her innocence, drawing strength from her presence. "You're all right," he murmured, kneeling to meet her gaze. "I'm here." Max circled around them, edging closer to the growling creature, whose posture had shifted. The bright beam of Jake's flashlight now illuminated the edges of the restless figure, a shaggy wolf, thin but powerful, eyes glimmering where fear existed just before. Jake's heart thudded. This was the moment, the culmination of circumstances that had brought him here. He realized he was on the verge of a breakthrough, casting aside preconceived notions of strength and fragility. He could not fully protect everyone from everything, but he could be present and engage, easing their fears instead of summoning his own. "Stay close, Lily. Let us show him we mean no harm," Jake said, as he stood, his life at this juncture demanding vulnerability and valor. Setting his flashlight down, he extended an arm toward the wolf, feeling the pivotal shift of direction, his own power intertwining with understanding. Each heartbeat synchronized as the wolf stepped forward, inching closer, the growls yielding to curiosity. Jake realized there was profound growth in action here. Pressed against the beast, he could embrace the person he was meant to be. Then a soft rustle came from the foliage behind them. Something else was coming. Jake turned sharply, a flicker of tension ignited anew. The forest held many secrets. What else was lurking just beyond reach, waiting for its moment to emerge? Jake felt every muscle tense as he swung his flashlight in the direction of the rustling sound. The beam flickered like a heartbeat, revealing shadows that danced within the thick underbrush. Fear gnawed at the edges of his resolve, but it was Lily's small frame beside him that anchored his focus. "Stay behind me, Lily," he commanded quietly, the steadiness of his voice surprising even himself. This wasn't merely a protective instinct, this was a choice. He could allow fear to dictate his actions, or he could step forward, asserting his newfound understanding of strength, one grounded in presence rather than aggression. The rustling intensified, anxiety biology humming within him. He knelt down, shifting his flashlight to illuminate the foliage as if peeling away layers of the unknown. Then, as if responding to Jake's probing, a pair of bright eyes blinked back from the shadowed depths. The proximity of whatever it was fanned the flames of urgency in his chest. "Max, stay," he instructed as the dog instinctively tensed, ready to take action. Jake felt the pulse of both the forest and his own life beat together, chaotic yet somehow synchronized. He took a measured step toward the noise. This is not just about them, he reminded himself, battling the whirlpool of doubt that threatened to suck him under. This was a chance, a split second, to pivot from the man who used to shy away from conflict to one who embraced the weight of responsibility. With a collective breath, the figure emerged. A young deer, startled yet curious, stepped into the light. Its gaze mirrored Lily's innocent eyes, wide and questioning. The creature paused, then blinked a moment that felt like a shared understanding. Jake could feel the shift within him. He recognized that this moment wasn't just about literally facing down threats but exploring the wilderness within himself where vulnerability thrived alongside courage. His heart softened as the deer and wolf exchanged glances, two beings caught in the crossfire of instinct and fear. It clicked in his brain, these animals were not so different from him. They, too, were navigating their circumstances. Wasn't he, Jake, doing the same? In a split second, the lesson enveloped him. True strength came from bridging the gap between fear and compassion. "Let us show kindness, not aggression," he whispered, the truths of his profession merging with a new clarity. The wolf seemed to receive this unspoken communication, its growl fading away like a receding tide. Jake turned back to Lily, feeling taller somehow, buoyed by the sincerity of his realizations. "See that? We share this space like they do," he said, glancing down at her excited grin. "We're all in this together." But then a muffled roar reverberated from deeper in the woods, cutting through the moment of calm. Hopeful connection shattered, the forest was alive with peril once more. Jake's body was propelled into action, instinctively preparing for what was to come. It was a foreign sensation, a push against the harmonious understanding he had just embraced. What was following them? The darkness swallowed the light, amplifying the thundering echoes that rattled his resolve. Jake felt the struggle rise within, a draw between instinct and empathy. Had he truly transformed, or was he retreating back to the fear he had fought so hard to navigate? The answer lingered just out of reach as his heart raced anew. A test awaited him. The question loomed: how far had he truly come, and could this moment solidify all he had begun to unravel? Jake's breath came in shallow bursts as he peered into the shadows, instinctively pushing Lily behind him to shield her from whatever lurked beyond their fragile barrier of light. The thundering roar echoed again, this time closer, vibrating through the air as if nature itself was challenging his newfound understanding. He gritted his teeth, grappling with the conflicting instincts hammering at his psyche. The vulnerability he'd embraced moments ago felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the primal urge to protect. "I want to let fear win," he muttered, though he wasn't certain who he was attempting to convince, himself or the elements closing in on them. Max growled lowly, his legs taut, indicating the kind of intensity that could easily spiral out of control. Jake placed a calming hand on the dog's back, grounding himself in that brief connection. It reminded him of the choice he had just made, not resorting to aggression, but instead leaning toward understanding. That wasn't something he could afford to lose in the heat of this moment. The shadows shifted again, and Jake felt that every neuron in his body was reacting. Each was a thread woven into the fabric of a larger design, each anchoring him to his purpose. The swirling chaos of conflicting emotions began to resolve, shifting focus back to the mantra that had begun to shape his approach: presence over fear, clarity over confusion. But clarity only felt like a mirage as the roar erupted once more, louder this time, rattling his very core. "We need to find a way out of here. Now," he said, his voice steadier than before despite his racing heart. He could almost hear the distant echoes of his previous self, the man who feared escalation and shunned confrontation. Moving with purpose, Jake guided Lily into the underbrush, taking care to keep her close while scanning the shadows. Each step was deliberate, forged from the space between instinct and his commitment to showing courage with integrity. Then he chanced a glance back at her. "Stay close, and remember what we talked about," he reminded her gently. "I will, Jake," she whispered, and her eyes shone with that same unyielding trust he had seen in the deer moments ago. It fueled him, reminded him that their journey was not only about surviving this immediate threat but also about forging tools for greater emotional battles within. Just then, the wooded darkness parted to reveal a charging figure, a massive bear, the embodiment of their collective fears. Jake's jaw tightened. Instinct screamed at him to run, to escape this perilous encounter, yet he could feel Lily's gaze upon him, an anchor he couldn't abandon. "Max, drop," he commanded, voice firm, as the dog obeyed, following his lead. Jake stepped forward slightly, ensuring that he was positioned to protect both his charge and himself, a calculated risk, the first time he actively confronted a threat head-on instead of fleeing. This moment was his crucible, a boiling pot where his desires and fears would collide. He could choose to retreat into the safety of trepidation or face the wild outside with the ferocity born from self-acceptance. In that breathless instant, Jake made his decision, another leap forward in his transformation, pushing against both fear and circumstance. He projected calm, embodying the strength that flickered like the flashlight beam. Yet, within the bear's piercing gaze, there lay a challenge, one that beckoned him to prove he was not merely adapting but evolving. Every instinct screamed for him to submit to terror, to turn back to safety. But as he steadied himself, he felt the undeniable weight of responsibility surging through him. Could he truly protect them both without losing the essence of what he had cultivated? As he took a deeper breath, preparing to face the beast head-on, an unexpected pang of clarity struck him. What if this was his moment to bridge courage with compassion? The approach of understanding wasn't just for animals but extended to all beings, even those which evoked primal fear. Then, with resolve coursing through his veins, Jake stepped onward, heart pounding with the gravity of his decision. The forest held its breath, suspended in the electric charge of impending confrontation. What lay before him was not just a confrontation with the bear, it was battling his own limitations. Would he emerge with a renewed sense of purpose, or would he find himself swallowed by the shadows? The answer simmered just beyond the precipice of immediacy, waiting for its unveiling. As the distant growl reverberated through the trees, Jake steeled himself, demanding every ounce of courage to surge forth. The bear's hulking frame broke the veil of darkness, muscles defined beneath its coat, moving with primal intent. Each heartbeat resonated with the call to action, reminding him of the journey thus far, the fear he had faced and the strength he had discovered within. "Lily, trust me," he whispered, channeling every ounce of calm he could muster into those few words. The unwavering look in her eyes anchored him more than he had anticipated. The weight of responsibility for another human life pushed against the fragile boundaries of his self-doubt. This was no longer about just confronting the bear, it was a confrontation with everything he had avoided: his insecurities, his belief in his inability to protect, and the deeper understanding of who he truly was. Jake began to angle himself away from the bear, moving in a wide arc, remaining calm yet alert. He wanted to guide the bear away from Lily, hoping that his presence would deter it. He felt Max stir, wary but loyal, every fiber of the dogess being prepared to defend. Their collective determination screamed that retreat was not an option, not now. With the bear's focus locked onto him, Jake took a step back, maintaining eye contact. He remembered his intuition from earlier, the flicker of understanding that it wasn't aggression he needed, but presence. "I am here, not to harm, but to coexist," he thought as he envisioned the mantra that had been slowly crystallizing in his mind. His breathing steadied as he concentrated on the energy between them. This was an intrinsic dance of dominance and surrender, a balance he must create. Realizing the need to lean into his newfound insight, he slowly raised his hands not as weapons, but in a gesture of peace, allowing the bear to see he posed no threat. His pulse quickened, racing in tandem with the introspective acknowledgement of fear bubbling just beneath the surface. In that vital moment, the mighty creature ceased its advance, its nostrils flaring as it inhaled deeply. Jake sensed the shift. The beast was no longer just a menace but a living embodiment of nature's strength and independence. All around them, the forest seemed to pause, the hush laden with anticipation, reflections of ancient instincts woven into the present. "Every wild creature has its role to play, just as I have mine," he thought, feeling a surge of conviction bloom within. This recognition worked like a key unlocking doors that had long been sealed within his psyche. With this new insight, he began to empathize with the bear, a deeply primal defensiveness awakened in its eyes. Could it sense his struggle? Could it feel his willingness to understand rather than conquer? Jake's muscles coiled tightly, yet his heart beat in rhythm with the wilderness. This was not a battle for survival but rather a significant encounter that reflected the hidden landscapes of his soul. To flourish in understanding is to embrace what lies waiting in the shadows, he mused, as he lifted his chin, standing firm. With a cautious paw, the bear stepped forward, its massive presence casting a heavy shadow that enveloped Jake and Lily. Time stretched thin as they shared this transcendent moment, the intertwining destinies of man and beast penetrating their hearts. Then, a growl rumbled, different now, an inquisitive sound rather than a threat, and with it, Jake felt an unprecedented shift. There, in the gaze of the creature before him, lay an opportunity to emerge not just as a protector but as a pivotal force of change. What new path awaited him beyond this threshold of fear? As the bear tilted its head, a profound understanding passed between them, leaving Jake grappling with questions that stretched beyond the animal itself. In this silent communion, he was no longer merely a man confronted by a beast, he was becoming someone entirely new, forged from empathy and insight. The bear paused, its breath evening out, and for the first time, Jake wondered if perhaps he had the strength to not just survive, but thrive in this wild world. Yet, as clarity began to suffuse his mind, a rustle from behind disrupted the stillness, snapping him back into the moment. What other challenges lay hidden within these woods, waiting to test the resolve he was beginning to uncover? Jake's senses sharpened at the sound behind him, the sudden break in the moment weighing heavily on his thoughts. The bear, shifting uncomfortably, resumed its wary stance while Jake's heart raced again, not from fear, but from the clashing uncertainty of what lay ahead. He instinctively turned to Lily, whose wide eyes reflected the urgency pulsing through the woods. Trust was fragile yet strong in that moment as she clutched Max's collar. "Stay close," he whispered, not to suppress her fear but to reinforce their unity. The weight of leadership had shifted within him, an unshackling from self-imposed fears that had previously paralyzed him. Now, as the unseen presence continued to rustle among the underbrush, Jake found himself unnervingly aware of his role as a protector, not just of Lily, but of the sense of purpose dawning within him. His mind raced through potential scenarios, the unexpected challenges that could arise. The bear would not be the only trial he faced in this untamed wilderness. There was something deeper in his gut, a sense that this journey was, in fact, a rite of passage, pulling him through layers of denial and pushing him into knowledge. What if he could not only confront this threat but also embrace the idea that he was more than a bystander in his life? As he considered facing whatever awaited them, Jake felt the compass of his own fears realign. Each rustle could either signal danger or reveal an opportunity for growth. The river of possibility coursed through him as he set his jaw, igniting a determination that surged forth, unapologetic. He was becoming a fluid force, merging with the wild, breathing in the clarity it offered. Is it fear that creates distance? He pondered as the sound grew nearer. Or is it fear that ignites that primal urge to confront? Jake's mind raced beyond the immediate threat. He began to ponder the complexities of conflict and resolution within his past, allowing the notion of confrontation to mean more than a physical battle. Life had always presented him with moments shrouded in anxiety. This was just another depth to explore. Behind the underbrush, a figure emerged, a hiker clad in dark green with a backpack. Jake tensed then relaxed as he recognized the twisting path the hiker had taken was intentional. After catching the man's eye, he felt a sudden flash of acknowledgement, as if they were both navigating the same wilderness of life, one fraught with uncertainty yet rich with the potential for transformation. "Everything all right here?" the hiker called out, his voice calm yet authoritative. Jake searched for words, struggling for a semblance of confidence. Would he present himself as an inexperienced wanderer in these woods or as someone who had encountered both a bear and his own demons? "We're good," Jake replied, finding strength in his resolve. "Just taking in the scenery." He sensed the hiker's curiosity peeking at his tone, possibly recognizing the deeper layers of Jake's statement. Would this moment of connection inspire him to share more, to express his journey of growth? Max, seemingly reassured by the hiker's presence, nudged against Jake's leg, pulling him back to the ground-level reality of the forest, reminding him of the power of companionship. A silent understanding formed, the rhythm of the woods was mirrored in his heart. The hiker stepped closer, assessing the scene as he began to engage. Jake's newfound self-awareness clashed with the instinctive urge to shield his thoughts. What would he reveal about his encounter with the bear? The faces of their shared experiences seemed to coalesce into an understanding that transcended mere survival. The air thickened between them, laden with anticipation. Could Jake embrace vulnerability to connect further? Amid the calm facade, tension sparked an urgency to reveal himself without fear, a progression from instinctive protection to intentional openness. With burgeoning courage and clarity of purpose, he drew a breath and stepped forward, determined to share the depths of his transformation. But as the words began to form on his lips, another sound emerged. A crack of a branch echoed through the underbrush, reverberating with a sense of peril. The bear, alarmed, snapped back into focus. In an instant, Jake felt the weight of existence pressing against him again. The path of uncertainty loomed before him, the threshold upon which he must now step, prepared to acutely test the foundation of who he was becoming. What lay beyond this newfound clarity and vulnerability? Would his growth withstand the wild's unpredictable trials? As Jake absorbed the commotion of the woods, he recognized a profound truth within his uncertainties. The hiker's presence reminded him that he was part of a larger narrative, a narrative woven through the fabric of the wilderness surrounding him. Every footfall, every heartbeat echoed the stories of those who had ventured before, and now, he was ready to join in and author his own chapter. "Stay sharp, Max," he whispered, shifting into a protective stance for both Lily and his loyal companion. The bear, once a figure evoking raw fear and instinct, transformed in his mind to become a symbol of the challenges he was destined to face. The sounds behind them prompted Jake to not retreat into a shell of self-doubt but to embrace the need for empathy amid hostility. Drawing from his training, he anticipated the creature's next moves, grounding his breathing calm and steady. This was his moment, to lead by example, showing not only Lily but also himself that understanding could arise even in the most chaotic of circumstances. It was both empowering and humbling, a revelation that filled him with a purpose he had almost forgotten. The underbrush parted once more as the hiker stepped back, his face steady and confident. "Did you encounter something?" he asked, taking stock of the environment. This question sparked a flicker of realization in Jake's heart. They were all navigating challenges, and perhaps their connection stemmed not just from the wilderness but from the individual journeys they had faced outside of its confines. "Just some wildlife," Jake said, his voice steady, as if each word had the power to evoke strength rather than reveal his vulnerability. He was not a prisoner of fear, he was the keeper of his truth. Lily glanced up at him, her eyes wide with both admiration and concern. This was the bond that tethered them together beyond the trees, beyond the bear, an unspoken promise that they would rise above this moment. Jake allowed this truth to wash over him. He could create a sanctuary through the strength he would articulate. "I was afraid," friend's vulnerability surged free on Jake's words, "but I learned that fear is only as powerful as we allow it to be." The hiker nodded, understanding flooding their space. "It's easy to let it take over." Establishing a voice of affirmation, Jake looked Lily in the eyes. "But we can choose to be courageous. We don't just run away from our fears. We face them." The words hung in the air with undeniable weight, creating a bridge of understanding. With the bear still watching, closely engaged in its own contemplation, Jake realized the power of connection. This dynamic threat no longer felt like an adversarial stalemate but rather a lesson in coexistence. He took a step closer to the bear, unflinching. The creature's growl softened, possibly sensing the shift in his energy, no longer seeking confrontation but forming a connection, a mutual respect shared in the wild. And then, there was a shift, a tug within his spirit. Clarity surged. Jake lifted his chin, holding the bear's gaze with resolute strength and newfound confidence. "We can find the balance, can't we?" He spoke softly, not just to the bear but to the little girl by his side, the hiker, and to himself. The bear delightedly lowered its head, as if acknowledging the merit of cooperation. The risks had not dissipated entirely, but the clouds of uncertainty began to clear, revealing the truth. Transformation lay within moving forward. It wasn't just about combating fears but redefining their narratives. "Let us keep moving," Jake said, now focused on finding their way out of the woods with renewed purpose. In that moment, they were a unit, human and animal, and the forest transformed into a shared experience of discovery, rather than a dark labyrinth. The trio forged ahead, glimpses of light peeking through the branches, illuminating their path. Each step mirrored Jake's resolve. He was not simply crossing into the unknown but was walking toward his rebirth. Recognizing the dichotomy of vulnerability and strength within one another made this journey transformative, revealing the layers of himself that had been stifled for so long. Jake felt proud of his progress. No longer burdened by the shadows of his past, he had now embraced the strength of those moments where fear had once taken root. The darkness remained a part of him, but he learned that light could pierce through even the heaviest of clouds. Lily's laughter rang out once more, infused with joy as she held Max's collar tightly. The sound resonated deeply within Jake, a reminder that hope could thrive in the unlikeliest of places, and it could blossom anew every single day, regardless of past failures. Each stride took him closer to the path out of the forest and into a brighter tomorrow. And amidst the rustling leaves and flickering lights ahead, he discovered a truth worthy of celebration. He had persisted, he had triumphed, and he had rediscovered his essence: a protector, a leader, a guide for others seeking their way through the shadows. As they reached the forest's edge, Jake turned one last time, reflecting on what this moment had imparted. He stood amidst the golden hues of sunset, hopeful once more, radiating a warmth that fortified his confidence. He had conquered not just the wilderness around him, but the wilderness within. "Let us go home." The words escaped him, firm and joyful, sending waves of affirmation through the two at his side. This was the moment he would carry with him, an indelible mark on the canvas of his heart. A reminder that courage was not merely the absence of fear, but rather the mastery of choosing growth over stagnation. And so, they stepped into the twilight, reclaiming not just their safety but the promise of brighter tomorrows. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, your voices matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is essential to our journey.